is our speaker, Dr. Carl Morris, who is a professor of computer science at Temple University. He's also a longtime union member and activist. His research at Temple includes artificial intelligence and autonomous systems. And he's going to talk to us today about an element that probably most of you know something about and have a little bit of uneasy feelings about, but might want to learn more about, and I certainly do want to learn more. And he's going to talk to us today about artificial intelligence, threats potentially coming, and regulation that's necessary to protect us and keep us safe, both on the national level and on the local level. Professor Carl Morris. Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing I want to mention about Carl is he is also running for U.S. Congress in the 3rd District. So this will not be a campaign speech because that's not what we're doing here at We the People Wednesdays, but you should all know that in addition to the important information he's going to share with us today, you can go seek out the information about his candidacy. Dr. Carl Morris.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. This is not gonna. Turns out, yeah. How's that? Okay, so good afternoon. I've met quite a few of you the last few weeks and months that I've been coming to this event, but I have not had the pleasure to introduce myself to everyone. So, as mentioned, I'm Carl Morris. I am a computer science professor at Temple University. That's one of the hats I wear and the one I will continue to wear for the rest of this talk. But as was mentioned, I'm also a candidate for Pennsylvania's 3rd Congressional District. Take that with a grain of salt or as a filter to listen to everything else I have to say today. So what I'm going to talk to you about is, generally speaking, artificial intelligence. And I can tell this is a very tech-savvy crowd, so this is going to go perfectly. No, it turns out that when I'm not on campus or not in a lab or not at a conference, I usually don't talk shop. In part because the minute I start to talk about what I do, eyes glaze over and people disconnect. So it's not a good way to really, so I talk about anything but. And that's understandable. All right. Technology, sometimes it gets complicated, it gets into the weeds, and people just disassociate. I'll give you a story. You might remember 8 years ago, thank you. We all became constitutional scholars when we learned about the emoluments clause. This was because news came to light that Donald Trump, in order to, I guess, amass wealth, additional wealth, there was, whether it was a heads of state or anybody that wanted to have influence, they would visit his DC hotel or they would visit Mar-a-Lago or any of his other properties. And we learned about this because, of course, it was national news. And it stayed in the news cycle for years. You might have even heard Mike Pence when he went to, I believe, Ireland. He had business in the capital, but he stayed at a Trump resort on the other side of the country. Again, so this was, again, Donald Trump amassing wealth. And this was news, national news, international news for a very long time. But it turns out Donald Trump didn't actually make that much money from that venture. He made about $40 million, according to reports, per year, and it's from the DC hotel. And it actually turns out he may have lost money in the end. He actually went and sold that hotel. Well, that's not the main part of the story, but and from all the other heads of state visiting his other properties, he might have made a couple $1 million. You know, which of us here don't have a couple million in the couch cushions, right? In the grand scheme of things, didn't really actually make that much money. Fast forward 8 years, we're in 2024 now. Who here has heard of a company called World Liberty Financial? Not nearly enough. Well, what you need to know about World Liberty Financial is that earlier this year, this company, which is backed by the Trump family, made the Trumps about $5 billion in profit. This is early September. In the last month, it settled down and now they're only about $1 billion in profits because, of course, these are the Trumps and they're just bad at things. But when you're comparing $1 billion in profit to the chump change, the lunch money they made 8 years ago, you'd like to think this news would be front page headlines every day. But none of us even hear about it. Why? Because World Liberty Financial is a company that operates on cryptocurrencies. It's a technical topic, and people don't connect to these technical details. It doesn't make for easy news. So the newspapers don't report on it. The evening news don't report on it more than one cycle, and then they move on. This is understandable, right? People don't connect with these topics, so it doesn't make it into the news. And ultimately, that's expected, that's understandable. When it comes to technology, individuals in society, we tend to be consumers. We utilize the technology, but we don't deal with the impact, we don't deal with the consequences. These tend to be macro level issues. And when it comes to macro level issues, we expect the government to step in and address these concerns, right? When there's an uptick in crime, you don't go out and try to fix it. When grocery store prices are high, you are not expected to lower it. Local governments will put out police to address crime. The Federal Reserve will fiddle with interest rates to address inflation. These are governmental level things. Ultimately, these macro level concerns with technology is also the responsibility of the government. The problem is those in government, whether at the federal, state, or local level, also tend to be just as detached, disengaged, and disassociated as the rest of us. And this is a problem. It's a problem that we see right now with the misinformation and disinformation that spreads online. They don't address it because it's complicated. It's a problem we see with the rise of social media and the impact it is having on the mental health of our young kids, especially young women. And those in power, our elected officials, have not addressed it because it's complicated. This goes back all the way to 25 years ago, when we used to hear about the digital divide and access to high-speed internet. This was something that the government never actually fixed because it was complicated. Not as complicated, interestingly enough, as my other examples, but more to the point, they didn't really see, they didn't have the foresight to recognize how important it would be for everyone to have access and equitable participation in the infrastructure that now runs the world. Who here remembers those conversations about the digital divide? Right? It's almost quaint now. Do you think they ever fixed it? No. Right now in the United States, there are 30 million people that do not have access to the internet at home. All right. If you don't like to operate on large numbers, that is the population of Philadelphia 20 times over. There are 8 million Americans that do not have access to the internet at all. At all. The government never fixed the digital divide. They just stopped talking about it. Now, this is a problem because we as a society, we're entering this new phase. It's this thing we all see, we all sense. There are a set of emerging technologies that are presenting themselves, and the poster child for all of these technologies is artificial intelligence. But this is not the kind of technology that you can simply not talk about and have it go away. AI is going to be in everything, and it's going to impact our lives. So let me contextualize that for you with a couple examples. They tell me I don't have a whole lot of time, so I'll be quick about this. A few months ago, the HHS under RFK Jr., Health and Human Services, they embarked on a pilot program. The pilot kicks off in 2026. And what they've done is they're pulling in some AI companies that will use their models to make determinations about coverage for procedures under Medicare. So, we're not done yet. So these AI models are going to be making determinations about what gets covered and what gets denied. But what's more is that they've essentially kicked off this project under this whole waste, fraud, and abuse umbrella. You've heard of this. You've heard of Doge. It's the same ilk. What they've done is that they've added this perverse incentive structure where they've said any savings accrued from the denial of service, those profits will be shared with the AI companies that provide the models. So what are you ultimately saying? If you tell this company, if you deny someone, you get money. What are you ultimately saying? And it gets even worse. Because what we know about AI right now, among other things, is that AI, almost all the models, have built-in bias. Not necessarily intentionally, but it is there. We know that these systems today have bias for or against women, seniors, ethnic and racial minorities, immigrants, the young, pretty much anyone who is not a middle-aged white male will experience bias from these systems. And a few months ago, the Trump administration, or Donald Trump, signed some executive actions that essentially said any AI company that wants to do business with the federal government cannot build in considerations for these bias. They basically said they don't want woke AI. So now you have these AI models making determination for what gets covered under Medicare, and we know these systems have bias built into them. This would be a really great time for Congress to step in and provide some oversight.
Yeah.
But this is the Congress that basically said, there's no digital divide, there's no misinformation, there is no mental health crisis being ushered in by social media. They have disassociated because they don't understand the technology well enough to address it. This is something that they should be fixing, and they can't.
They won't.
I have to say that. Another example. A few months ago, the Pentagon, you've heard of the Pentagon, issued 4 contracts of $200 million each to the 4 big AI companies. Google, OpenAI, they create ChatGPT, Anthropic, they create another one called Claude, and xAI. Do you know who owns xAI? Elon Musk. These 4 companies have been brought into the Pentagon, and it is shrouded in mystery exactly what they're doing. I've read the reports. It's a whole lot of words without saying much. Now, if not before, if healthcare wasn't a big enough deal, we should at least be concerned when we start to use AI in warfare. Any veterans here? That's fine. That's fine. It's still a concern for us. We talk about the arena of war and all of that, but we can still appreciate it even if we haven't served ourselves. This is where Congress should be stepping in to provide a check on the executive branch. Because we as individuals, as individual members of society, cannot provide that oversight. We can't do it. What's your name, man? I have your name? Carol. Carol, would you like to write a letter to the Pentagon? Or to one of the AI companies? Dear Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI, at your earliest convenience, please provide all data and summaries on your strategies for identifying and mitigating bias in your systems as it relates to the identification of insurgents or enemy combatants in arenas of war. Also, please highlight, where possible, under what circumstances these systems may recommend or trigger the deployment of autonomous drones to engage with said combatants. Yours sincerely, Carol. Or somebody else may need to write that follow-up letter that says, please provide clarification as to whether your models are trained and limited in scope for deployment overseas, or are they trained for deployment on the homeland? Because, as we know, certain administrations have had conversations where they have essentially said the enemy is within. These are the types of things where Congress needs to be able to provide a check and legislation to protect individuals. And they do not, because they are detached. Time is of the essence, so I'll wrap up. This is not something that only happens at the federal level, even though those are my examples, and I have many more if we want to talk off the air. This happens at the state, this happens at local level. Last week, Wednesday, I was at the first ever Philadelphia City Council hearing on AI. And it was the most depressing 3.5 hours I've had in a very long time. I'll give you the cliff notes. They're not prepared. We heard expert testimony where they were warning of what's to come. We had public comments where they were telling us how afraid they were and they thought their elected officials would let them down. City council people, to their credit, held the hearing, but to their discredit, were completely unprepared with questions. And the Parker administration sent representatives who had no idea what was going on. So things are not looking up. Sorry for the very sobering message after the beautiful music. But things are looking sort of. What I would like us to do as citizens, as involved, caring citizens, is start to take some action. No, we may not be able to address these things at the federal level. It gets complicated. It's hard to wrap our hands around. But we can actually take some action. Do I speak to action?
Well, no, I'll talk about that.
Okay, well, so that will be discussed
preview it.
later. But suffice to say, we're entering an interesting time. Things are going to change, and we're already seeing the shifts. It is happening. We need to start to demand more from our elected leaders, because things will be different. Thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
We're just full of good news today, aren't we?
Yeah, we need hope now.
All right. I have a little